Hey, it's Tess. Today I want to talk more about this U-squared book. For those that don't know me, I'm a bariatric patient. I am nearly 10 years post-surgical. I was challenged to go live a few years ago and it just never stopped, and I probably never will now. It's just a way to share my journey. The bariatric surgery was just the start. The tools and the things that I learned during that process actually helped me to change all areas of my life, including leaving the W-2 world to work for myself. So today I want to talk about U-squared because a lot of what I had to do is to live life and do things differently than I'd ever done it before. So I just want to share some things I've learned, and it's kind of interesting when I'm looking at some of this because even quotes, like I love, anyone who's followed me knows I love to look up quotes, and I do prefer quotes from known names like Dan Sullivan, Maya Angelou, Earl Nightingale, Albert Einstein, Henry Ford, anything like that. And I found one from Henry Ford today that does talk specifically about thinking beyond what common sense would allow. And I thought this was really interesting because we all say we're seeking people with common sense. Now, I want to say the idea of U-squared is to take quantum leaps. So that means going above and beyond and excelling past. It doesn't mean less than, it means above. And you can almost think about it like a emotional or a mood scale. You have this middle level, and then you can either be unhappy, despair, angry, frustrated, ornery, whatever you want to be, low. So that's low mood or low energy. You have your middle line, and you can be happy, joyful, excited, bliss, anything like that that's a happy mood or thought can be above that line. So I thought it was kind of interesting. So it's almost like it's talking about common sense is just in the middle. And we want to shoo way past that. It says, most of us can be found flying too close to the ground. So that's that middle line, too close to the ground. Too often we don't give ourselves permission to soar. And another thing that we're talking about here is a 10 or 20% improvement isn't the idea at all. That would only represent an incremental gain. So common sense would say, according to U-squared and taking quantum leaps, we have to seek a lot more than an incremental gain or a common sense gain. It says it's time to start focusing on possibilities rather than on limits or obstacles. Making a quantum leap means that I gotta be careful with this. Making a quantum leap means moving outside your mental boundaries. If you will rethink how you're thinking, you can multiply your performance potential. You must let your desires guide you instead of allowing yourself to be boxed in by perceived constraints. And I think that happens to a lot of us. Common sense is one of those things that we all seek. We always say people are... we look for someone with common sense. Now, the idea is you want someone who's seeking more than common sense, not less than. But it's kind of funny because to everything I'm reading, common sense is like the middle ground. It's just right in the middle. So remember, you want your desires to guide you because you want to go past normal constraints. You want more than an incremental gain. It says, seeking the quantum leap means you're violating the boundary of the probable. You don't limit your desires to what you think you can. Start going after what you want. It talks about instead of an additional 10%, quantum leaps produce a dramatic and multiple gain, an exponential increase. You can double your level of success, even triple it. You can go beyond that. You can leverage up your performance to the second, third, or fourth power, or even beyond, if we get back past that middle road or that common sense. And I thought that was so interesting because I started looking up articles on common sense because I didn't really think that I would find quotes to back it up or articles on it, but I did. I found a lot of articles about this idea of a quantum leap means we have to go past common sense. So often it's almost like really a put down when you say you want someone to have common sense, because that means they're not even to the halfway road, and common sense is just the halfway road, and we're seeking higher. This book talks about the idea that quantum leaps, or being above the common sense line, quantum leaps require uncommon sense. We need to rethink our thinking, violate the boundaries of the possible, suspend disbelief, act as if our success is certain and proceed boldly. So it's all about being bold and going forward and doing things in a different way. And I have done that in the past 10 years. I mean, everything, like I said, each year is different than the year before. I'm involved in things that I really never even saw as something that I thought I would be interested in. So everything continues to change. And as I continue to read this, it talks about, true, there are limits, but you don't need to worry about them. Your real limits are far beyond the artificial mental boundaries. We have a self-imposed prison. We need to, it says, so how do you break out of that jail? Through surrender. So-called common sense can be a curse that puts a ceiling on how far you can reach or how far you can fly. So the idea, common sense is middle of the road. If you want to soar, if you want to fly, you're going to have to break through that ceiling and get higher up on the scale, the mood scale, if you want to call it that. But there were some things that they talked about that could help you with that. One of them being change your personal rules for success. And I thought about that because even myself, sometimes people are just seeking to get by or just, there was a period in my life where I always sought to be, and this will surprise so many people, but I always sought to be under the radar. And yeah, no, I guess I can't say that anymore, but you got to change your rules for success. You have to quit trying harder. And I talked about this yesterday or the day before. When I was doing the 300-mile bicycle ride, we had a guy named Steve. And Steve would ride alongside of us, and he was almost like coaching us because we would do rides on weekends because a 100-mile ride 3 days in a row, you want to do some training for it before you do it. It's a tough ride. It's a really tough ride. So what he would do is we'd be all riding, and when we'd start struggling and it would be hard to ride, he'd ride up next to us and he'd go, work smarter, not harder. And kind of what he was talking about is when you're riding road bikes in those organized rides like that, we had the clip-in shoes. So your shoe would clip in, and then if you did it right, if you were going to use, there was a certain method to use the shoes right, because you didn't want to treat the pedal like you would if you were riding, because normally you'd have to go up and down, up and down. Well, with those, you can just keep almost in the air moving, and your pedal will move with you because it's suspended. You're like hooked into it. But there's a certain way that you ride that so that you get the most mileage with the least amount of energy. Because when you're doing, I can remember when I did that ride, I think it was, if I'm remembering correctly, and it's been a number of years, it was taking 7 to 9 hours to get in for 100. One of the days it was like 112 or 116 miles, but in total over the weekend for all 3 days, it was at least 100 a day. And we ended up with 300 over the course of 3 days. So quit trying harder and try smarter. Try to bust through that mid-level and go further. Think beyond what common sense would allow. Suspend disbelief. You got to stop thinking that it can happen and go for it. And I kind of did that because for me to sign up for that ride, I didn't even have a bike when I signed up for it, and I did finish it. But I'm not going to tell you it was easy. It was tough, but I was able to do it. Focus on ends rather than means. Rely on the unseen forces. And I think that's for so much. They say so much of our brain is not used. There's so much more out there that we don't even realize is out there. So we can reach further and look further and try to find things that maybe we didn't see before. The only reason we live in a world like we do now is because people push boundaries, because people didn't accept the common as common. They went for more. They strove for more. They worked for more. They created more. They pushed boundaries. They looked to try to see if there was a way to improve things. It says choose a different set of risks. Trust in the power of pursuit. And I like that one. Trust in the power of pursuit. As you're pursuing something, doors will open. You'll have opportunities. You'll see different avenues. It may not come out at first, but the more you keep working it, something will come up. Seek failure, and maybe change that word failure to seek knowledge, because failure is a form of knowledge. And it's almost like that word anxiety and excitement. It's almost, they say, chemically the same reaction in your body. It's just how you react to it. Are you letting this chemical release in your body cause you anxiety or excitement? So it's kind of the same thing. Seek failure as a form of learning and don't take it to be a negative thing. And I used to not want to fail. Get uncomfortable. And I'll say, I've had to do that a lot the past few years. Now I'm kind of used to it. But, I'll share this because it's kind of funny. I've attended a lot of events in the past, since 2021. And I went to one recently because most know that I'm a life agent and I'm also a student of the IBC Practitioners Program. And I went to something that they call the Think Tank a couple of weeks ago. And I'm used to going to events and I know everybody. So I walk in and I know people. I walk right up and I know people and it's very comfortable for me. Well, when I walked into the Think Tank, I looked around and I arrived like the night before and everybody else hadn't arrived yet. And I walked into this thing where there was like a meetup the night before. And I looked around this room and there wasn't a single person that I knew. And I thought, and it reminded me of the feeling that I had in the beginning of maybe not belonging. So I do understand that when people think they don't belong. But for me, pushing past that was the greatest gift I gave myself, because what has happened since then? I have a whole new set of people. I've learned new skills. I'm working in a different way. I wrote a book. I've met new people. I've gone to places, traveled more in the past 4 years than I have in my entire lifetime. So it's been really a blessing, but I had to get uncomfortable. And it was so funny to me that I was uncomfortable at the think tank because I walked in and I'm like, there is not a single person here that I know. And that's, if you know about the events I go to, that's very unusual. I can say probably in the past 4 years, except for that very first one, it's the first time that I've actually been in an event that I did not know anyone when I first walked in. So I do understand that, but pushing past that has been one of the greatest gifts of my life. I do see a couple people on. Hello, thank you for being here. But it was a push and it was a reminder of what it was a few years ago before I started attending masterminds. And why did I start attending masterminds? Because they say you become the least of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And I've surrounded myself with people that are doing things on levels that are very different than what I ever thought were possibilities for me. So it's been a great gift. I was talking about Think Tank as a place I went to and I didn't know anyone. This is actually who the Think Tank is all about. Becoming Your Own Banker by R. Nelson Nash. And he is the one who that is almost like the father of infinite banking process, where you take a specially engineered and designed whole life policy with a high cash value. You don't want to just go to your average life insurance agent. If you want to learn about this process, please reach out to me because I can connect you with a team that'll help you. But you want to, you create a banking system with a high cash value by using a specially designed whole life policy. I myself have 3 of them, and that's what I've been learning because I want to help people with that process. Insurance has been my life my whole career, and now I just changed the way that I approach it. But it was kind of interesting to me because I had to get uncomfortable to go to that event, but it reminded me that the very first event I went to 4 years ago, I was very uncomfortable. The other part about you don't want common sense, you want to break past common sense, is that you want to make your move before you're ready. And I thought, I'm guilty of that. As an accounting person, nobody likes to make a move until they know everything is lined up and that it's not going to cause you a problem. And I understand there has to be a certain amount of planning in that environment because we were preparing like 150-page annual statements. So there has to be a certain amount of planning. But when you get into that environment, you almost take it too far in all areas of your life. So sometimes you have to get uncomfortable. And I'll say I've had to get uncomfortable at these events. I can't tell you how many times I can't go on the zip line, and they're like, just go. Or I can't go on that helicopter. Just go. I'm sure you're scared now. Go. And there's been a couple of things, but there are cool memories. For those that don't remember, I got stuck on the zip line. That was kind of my claim to fame for a while, but it's kind of died down now. I went on a helicopter, and one of my very first students that I tutored reading reading, and I don't think I worked with him on math, just reading. But I was actually in the helicopter, and he's a helicopter pilot in the military now. So I actually took pictures and sent them to him and said, I could go up here because I felt confident knowing that you were a pilot. So that's my goal one day, is to go up in the air with him. But it's kind of like, I told him the student became the teacher. And that particular day, the student became the teacher. But that's what you want to do, is move before you're ready. Get uncomfortable. Change that word failure to learning. Push past what common sense says. You don't want to be below it, because we all know that we're trying to get some people to reach that common sense area, but shoot past it. I think there's unlimited things for all of us if we open our mind to opportunities and to create and to look at life differently. Look inside for opportunities. I think they're all around us, and sometimes we don't see it. Even myself, I had kind of an epiphany the other day, and I'm like, oh, I was going about things in the wrong way. And when I was thinking about, because I want to start speaking, and even about I really believe in this process. Like I said, please reach out to me and I'll help you with some videos and hold your hand through it if you want to learn about it. But I was trying to figure out my way to start reaching people, and my approach was totally in the wrong direction. I wasn't staying true to what my life has been up to this point, and I had to kind of stop and think about it a little differently. And actually I was meditating, and meditating is just that quiet time where you try to just sit and let the junk clear or the noise disappear so that you can see things a little differently. And it kind of opened it up for me. But what was really interesting about this when I was looking at it is that I was looking for quotes, and it was hard to find quotes that weren't saying it's difficult to find someone with common sense, because what I'm looking for is way past common sense. This is the idea of not living ordinary, but going extraordinary, pushing past the boundaries, creating, moving, becoming more, looking at life differently. And I was looking for a quote, and it was hard. It was really hard to find one. And I finally found one. And I'm so glad I found this one, because it's Albert Einstein. So before I sign off, I'll share this Albert Einstein. First, I'll say the same thing I've been saying lately. Anyone who is interested, this is my book. And this is about my journey up until the point that I left the W-2 world to pursue a different way of working. And then this is the book about how I'm working now. So this is about the infinite banking process. So anyone who's interested, Becoming Your Own Banker by R. Nelson Nash, if you want to pick that up and read it and then reach out to me, I can help you with next steps, because that changed my life, changed the way I'm working, and actually got me involved with this crew of people that got me on the path that I'm in now. And I would want nothing more than that for you. So my closing, I'll give you my opening quote again. Quantum leaps require uncommon sense. Rethink your thinking. Violate the boundaries of the probable. Suspend disbelief and act as if your success is for certain, and proceed boldly. But the quote that I love, that I finally found, that I had to struggle to find because I wanted a known name that people would know, was Albert Einstein. So I was so excited to find this. And Albert Einstein said, "Common sense is the collection of prejudices acquired by age 18. And I thought, oh, Albert Einstein, we know is not a current guy. And I know nowadays we always talk about trying to get people to common sense, but I think what he was trying to say is we need to get past common sense. We need to reach for more. And I think for all of us, there's a lot more we can reach for. They often say that our brain, we probably use 5% of what's available to it. I think we can push boundaries. We wouldn't live in the world we live in now if we hadn't pushed boundaries. I often talk about that. On one side of my family, they lived on a farm. There were no cars. There were no TVs. And one of my grandmothers on that side lived until Y2K. She lived until 2 weeks into Y2K because, and I almost think it's prophetic that she lived that long, because she lived into Y2K because she wanted to see if the world was going to curl and spin and do all kinds of weird stuff when we went into the year 2000. But why that is so touching to me is her oldest daughter was involved in working on the first computers at Burroughs in the 60s in the big mainframe. She was top level security clearance, but she died very young. She died in her 20s, late 20s, and it was 20 years later that my grandparents ran across her boss, and her boss told them that she had been working on computers, and she had never told a soul. She had passed away with that secret, and somebody years later shared that with my grandparents. And I actually will have to find it. I have found an article that talks about the work that she would have been doing in those days at Burroughs. It was an actual pamphlet from Burroughs talking about the years when she would have been there and what they were doing related to computers. But in those days, they were mainframes. And like I said, it was so different even then. When I first got into the accounting industry, I was doing, before they dragged me into insurance accounting, because there was about a year or two, I did the books for small businesses. And we would actually enter in the computer and we would send it down to Chicago. They would print off our statements and second day air them. So the world we live in now is very different. And I don't think living commonly got us there. Can we do better? Absolutely. But more of us need to be seeking to do better and get past that common and get into the uncommon. So thank you guys for being here. Have a beautiful night. And my dream and hope for you is that you find the things that bring joy and bliss and excitement and take your life to a level that you never dreamed possible. Because I think there's more out there for all of us if we're interested in reaching for it. Thank you and have a great night.